Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be showing the process for this painting as well as talking about something I guess that's a little bit controversial. I'm not really sure, but let's get started and I'll get into it. So the transition footage is a little bit different than my usual because I just wanted to share my absolute joy at the changing of the weather that we have here. Two of the reasons that I absolutely love living in the Pacific Northwest are the forest and the rain. So I am, I guess, a little bit strange in that I love the gloomy weather. I love the rain. I love when it's chilly but not cold enough to snow and you can kind of bundle up in a blanket with a hot cup of coffee or tea or whatever. And the only thing that I am missing in that equation is a fireplace, because all I have is like a fancy heater. I think they call it an electric fireplace, but it's basically just like a heater that has a picture of fire to give you the illusion, and it just makes me angry. But either way, I am very excited for the weather shift that we have here. So onto this painting and what I wanted to talk about today. And the reason that I think it's a little bit controversial is because I think it goes against the most common advice that I guess that you get as a artist or as a beginner artist. You get it from pretty much all directions, teachers or experts, fellow artists, things like that. And that is this notion that a truly great piece or a successful piece of art needs to be planned out. You need to go through several iterations of like thumbnailing, have an idea in your head, decide on the composition and all of this stuff that you want before you go into the actual like creating of the piece. And that is something, that's kind of a process that I follow for maybe 90% of the pieces that I make. I am terrible about actually thumbnailing, but I will go through several different sketches of a piece before I like land on a pose and composition and everything that I actually like, and that I want to proceed to make into a final painting. But every once in a while, especially if I happen to be going through like an artist block where I feel like I have no ideas, it is good for me to start a piece with no plan in mind. So this particular piece, I knew I wanted to make something very splashy, like a digital version of like a splashy watercolor painting or an expressive watercolor painting, but I wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit because my typical palette is very saturated or bright colors with a few shadows here and there, but this one I wanted to go with a very muted color palette and see if that could still have the same sort of like energy behind it as my traditional pieces do or my typical pieces do. And so I started with the background and then I drew in a sketch of just kind of a comfort subject, I guess you could call it. I typically, if I'm drawing a portrait of anybody, it's typically going to be just a pretty girl. So I started with that, and then I decided, why not give her cat ears just to make it a little bit more interesting. Again, nothing like earth-shatteringly original or anything, but it was literally just going with my intuition. As I was laying down some brush strokes, my brain said, do this, or try this, what if we did this? And that's just kind of where I went with it. And as soon as I had the concept down for a cat girl, I decided to make her a black cat girl. And that's probably just because spooky season is upon us. But I decided, she's a black cat. And then from there, my brain sort of filled in the gaps of like what I perceive if a black cat was a person, personified, what they would actually look like, what they would wear, maybe the expression they would have. And that all stuck within my original, the only thing that I had for this piece when I started was muted color scheme. So that's where I decided to go with it. And you can see something that I do a lot in this piece is turn the background on and off, also turning like the sketch layer on and off. And that is so that I can work on the individual aspects or the individual parts of the painting without the other parts sort of getting in the way. I know that that's kind of counterintuitive because when you're making a painting, you want all of the pieces to kind of work together, so you usually like just work on all of the pieces at the same time. But every once in a while, my brain just can't see one piece that I'm trying to work on if other pieces are also on the screen. So a lot of the times when that's happening, I will turn off those pieces. So for the most part, I have kind of settled into a workflow in Procreate that involves 2 or 3 standard Procreate brushes, my favorite ones being the 6B pencil, the Tinderbox inker or liner, and like the Tamar painting brush. But this particular one, I think I used 6B to sketch for sure, but then pretty much everything else that was used as a custom brush. Either a custom brush that I made myself or a custom brush that I purchased. I will leave a link in the description, or I'll leave a couple of links in the description box below for the purchased brush sets that I used. I think I used a total of like 5 or 6 brushes in this one, which again is also different than what I typically do, because I typically try to keep it to like 4 brushes or less. But this one, like I said, I was just kind of playing. I didn't have like a goal or a plan, so I kind of was just throwing everything on the canvas and trying different things. For sure, I have a splash or a watercolor like splatter brush set that I used for the background. So I will leave links to those in the description box below. And you guys can hear the rain just picked up, I think, in the background. I apologize if it just sounds like a bunch of static, but we have had pockets of like torrential downpour rain, and I have my windows open because I love it. But in conclusion, I just wanted to say that I think it is actually very beneficial to paint without a plan sometimes, or draw without a plan, or whatever your creative medium is, because it allows you to kind of be free with the choices that you make. You're not as worried or tied to like a specific idea. You're not like trying to force the piece to turn into the image that you have in your mind, which PS will probably literally never happen. And I know that for me personally at least, doing a bunch of thumbnails or doing a bunch of sketches and then picking the one that you like and refining it with line art and working towards a very specific goal for what you're creating, that's good, but it also can limit or inhibit the energy of the creation process, which shows through in the finished piece. So a lot of the times pieces that were very heavily planned out and you kind of hacked away forever and ever trying to perfect them, they turn out looking kind of rigid, lifeless, dare I say. And there is kind of an issue, at least in the way that I view artistic creation. There's a little bit of an issue with things that are like too perfect and they look kind of like they were made by machines, especially with digital art. It's very, very easy to fall into making pieces that look like they were created by the computer rather than by a human hand. And I personally like the images or the whatever is created using a human touch. They have little imperfections, they have energy to the lines, they look like they have a little bit more of a sense of movement. So I think that there is beauty in the imperfect pieces, or just the imperfections of individual pieces, and that can easily be lost if you are trying to overanalyze and overplan and overwork a piece. So trying to just go with the flow, paint without a plan, just have fun with the creation process and not be so concerned about the end result, I think can actually have really, really good results, not only for the piece that you happen to be creating at the time, but for your future pieces as well, because it helps you kind of work that muscle, the creativity muscle, and be able to trust your own intuition a little bit more as an artist and feel a little bit more comfortable letting go of the handlebar of perfection and just creating a piece that feels more human and feels more you and leans more into just who you are as a person and as an artist. So that's going to be all for me. I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of the painting. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Thank you.